Hello, I'm going live. My microphone is on, the music is fading, so I suppose I'd better switch to that view really, hadn't I? Oh, hang on. Do you know what? This is all over the place today. Forgive, well, not forgive, but that shouldn't be there. This is from something I did a couple of days ago, which we'll be releasing on the 28th, and I've forgotten to set everything back up. So let's try and work out what it is I need to do. So that can go off, that can go on, and is it that one? No, that one? Yes, I think that's everything, and chat box overlay is there. Just send a test message. Yeah, that's working. Right, so this almost looks like it should do. However, I'm now going to go onto this view and it's going to be all wrong. So I'm going to just... good grief, excuse me. There we go. That's okay. Typing view, opening titles. Yeah, right, sorry about that. Oh, no, wrong buttons. Oh, good grief, it's all going hideously wrong today. Right, so what I'm here to do today, hopefully, depending on how tired I feel and how long it takes, is I really want to get chapter 42 of Empress signed off. Chapter 42 was supposed to be the final chapter. It's not. I wrote a detailed breakdown of what was meant to be the epilogue and then decided that the epilogue was missing something, so I wrote an extra chapter, chapter 41, to take a lot of exposition out of the epilogue and to show some really key character moments that I feel I would have shortchanged myself and the reader if I hadn't put them in. So chapter 42 was meant to be the epilogue, but I got to 8,500 words and there were still some really key scenes to do, and it reached a point that just sounded like the end of a chapter. So I just admitted to myself that I could either have had a stupidly long chapter or admit to myself that there was still one chapter to write. So this kind of messes up my targets for the month. So my target was originally... Well, no, my target was write 2 chapters. Thankfully it wasn't finish the first draft because I'm not going to do that. But it was to write chapters 41 and 42. I'm nearly done, so I've written it, I've done my screen editing, and now I'm going to do my paper editing, hopefully get it finished today, depends how long it takes. I have given myself to the end of the month to do it, which is the 28th, so that's 3 more days. However, I'm also working a lot over the next 3 days, so it'll be tricky, so I'm going to try and get it all finished today. However, we shall see, depends how, because I'm still feeling jet lagged after my Singapore trip, which is ridiculous because came home 4 days ago, but never mind. Right, so what else have you missed? Well, if you listen to the podcast, you wouldn't have missed anything. So if you go there's the details of the podcast. I have stopped doing the British Artists Top 40 podcast. I still compile the chart every week and listen to the chart every week and make it available as a Spotify playlist, but I've stopped doing the chart because almost nobody was listening to it and it seemed a little bit pointless, like a broken pencil, as Blackadder would say. Right, so I'm just going to crack straight into this. If anybody chats with me, then I will see it and I will respond. So let me go to, let me minimise this. Oh, and the one thing I have forgotten, I always forget to put Discord on. Let's just put Discord on, if I can find the button. Give it half an hour whilst it downloads updates, which it does every bloody time. Yep, downloading update 1 of 1. Just let it install. La la la. Not every time, but most times. Come on. Shall I just crack on anyway? Sod it. So the way I shall do this... Oh, hang on. No, something happened there. So I've got things in my screen on the wrong order. So that's... Can I rearrange them on here? No. It's now verifying Discord like it's a new piece of software. Checking for updates. Downloading 7 updates. Should have done this before I started. Sorry. Right, installing. Right. Talk amongst yourselves. I think it's loaded. Nearly has. Got rid of a blank screen at the moment. But as soon as it's loaded, did you know there are a bunch of hidden Easter eggs in the app that happened? Oh, it didn't come up long enough for me to read it. Okay, so there is if you go to the Discord server, which is on that QR code, there is a live audio. Oh, hang on. Hope you've got audio. Let me just check. Something I've messed around. Hang on. Oh, hang on. There you have. That's sort of right. Let me just. I've made a slight boo-boo. Oh, it shouldn't matter, should it? Okay, right. Yeah, so there is a live audio channel now open. So if you go to the Discord server, then you can join it, and I will hear you, and you can speak to me. Lovely. Right. I think. Okay, let me go on to typing view. Chapter 42, Ever After. Ronnie woke, reached across the other side of the double bed, and found that it was empty. It was still warm, suggesting that Adrian had only just left. Ronnie lay her head back into the pillows and smiled. She could hear that he was doing something in the room next door, probably topping up the stove with logs, although they would not be here tonight, so he would not be adding as many as usual, since it needed to be run down. That's just. Ronnie lay her head back into the pillows and smiled. She could hear that he was doing something in the room next door, probably topping up the stove with logs, although they would not be here tonight, so he would not be adding as many as usual. The room had lacked the feminine touch when she'd first come here just over 5 months ago. Since then, she'd arranged a wardrobe and a chest of drawers. On top of the chest was a vase filled with wildflowers that she had picked yesterday. 3 pencil drawings of similar flowers were pinned to the wall. Ronnie sighed. The chest of drawers would soon have to be moved, and there'd be nowhere for the vase to go. The sounds from the engagement room stopped. The adjoining door opened, and Adrian peered through. When he saw she was awake, a broad grin crossed his face. "Good morning, beautiful," he said as he walked into the room. He had not yet dressed and was wearing the shorts that he slept in. Wearing only probably would be better. "Good morning, beautiful," said he walked into the room. He had not yet dressed and was wearing only the shorts he slept in. Ronnie liked it, did she? That's nice. Ronnie liked it when he said nice things about how she looked, partly because she knew that he meant it, and partly because at the moment she felt fat and unattractive. She glanced down at her stomach, which was starting to protrude. She had been larger, she reflected. And such. She had been larger, she reflected, when she gained weight for her very first interface, but she still did not like what she saw in the mirror every morning. That's fine. Adrian, on the other hand, always took a breath away when she looked at him. The manual labour their new life had forced him into had built up the muscles in his tanned arms, legs and torso. He had not cut his hair since she'd been here, so it was almost down to his shoulders. Now, he was energetic and caring and beautiful, and his sweetness and charm were irresistibly wrapped in his reassuring, soft Yakunda glow, although that was fading now. Not because he was no longer what Idrisil would describe as someone with a good soul, far from it. Ursula had explained to her that she no longer needed the ability to identify Yakunda, and as such that ability would fade with time. Adrian lifted the covers and slid into the bed beside her. His mouth went straight to hers, with his left hand cupping the back of her head. I don't know if I need to explain. That's almost okay. It's better. Ronnie closed her eyes and after a few moments felt a warm kiss on her belly. Adrian was saying hello to their daughter as he did every morning. She waited until his face was close to hers again and then smiled at him. "You ready for our trip?" Do that page again, but that's not bad actually. Ronnie woke, reaching across to the floor on the other side across the other side of the double bed, and found that it was empty. It was still warm, suggesting that Adrian had only just left. Ronnie, I think I need to lose the repeat of Ronnie and just go she. Ronnie woke, reached across the other side of the double bed, and found that it was empty. It was still warm, suggesting that Adrian had only just left. She lay her head back into the pillows and smiled. She could hear that he was doing something in the room next door, probably topping up the stove with logs, although they would not be here tonight, so would not be adding as many as usual. The room had lacked the feminine touch when she first came here. The bedroom. The bedroom had lacked the feminine touch when she had first come here just over 5 months ago. Since then, she had arranged a wardrobe with a chest of drawers. On top of the chest of drawers was a vase filled with wild flowers that she had picked yesterday. 3 pencil drawings of similar flowers were pinned to the wall. Ronnie sighed. The chest of drawers would soon have to be moved, and there would be nowhere for the vase to go. The sounds in the adjacent room stopped, the adjoining door opened and Adrian peered through. When he saw she was awake, a broad grin crossed his face. "Good morning, beautiful," he said as he walked into the room. He had not yet dressed and was wearing only the shorts that he slept in. Ronnie liked him and said nice things about how she looked. Partly because she knew that he meant it, and partly because at the moment she felt fat and unattractive. She glanced down at her stomach, which was starting to protrude. She had been largely reflected when she gained weight for her very first interface, but she still did not like what she saw in the mirror every morning. Adrian, on the other hand, always took her breath away when she looked at him. Her breath, there's an away there. What Adrian looked like, on the other hand, always took her breath away. The manual labour that their new life had forced him into had built up the muscles in his tanned arms, legs, and torso. He had not cut his hair since she'd been here, so it was almost down to his shoulders. I'm going to lose the now. The now doesn't feel right. He was energetic and caring and beautiful, and his sweetness and charm were irresistibly wrapped up in his reassuringly soft Yakunda glow. All that was fading now. Not because he was no longer what Idrisil would describe as someone with a good soul, far from it. Ursula had explained to her that she no longer needed the ability to identify Yakunda, and as such that ability would fade with time. Adrian lifted the covers and slid into the bed beside her. His mouth went straight to hers as he ran his right hand along the curve of her stomach. Ronnie closed her eyes, and after a few moments felt a warm kiss on her belly. Adrian was saying hello to their daughter as he did every morning. She waited until his face was close to hers again, and then smiled at him. "Are you ready for our trip?" "Yes," said Adrian. "Reuben is covering for me in the fields, and Mr. Shaw says we be. God, he's turned into a farmer already. "Yes," said Adrian. "Reuben is covering for me. Fields, which is all we reason to when we're down there anyway." Teams were still regularly travelling south of the border to release people. The number of village residents had almost doubled since Ron had come out of hibernation, and in a couple of weeks' time, tenants would start to occupy the second village. Some of the first were moving across that was not populated purely by new people. It was going to take a couple of years before they retrieved all of those in hibernation up and down the country and filled all 3 villages, but it did feel like things were changing every day. The expedition this week was to Mansfield. A while back, Ronnie had asked Idrisil if her friend Laura from university could be one of those saved, and Idrisil had agreed. Ronnie wanted to be there when Laura revived and was going down with the recovery team. Adrian was going with her, as was Marianne. And so was, as was. as was Marianne, for a much needed change of scenery. As well as Ursula and Carruthers. Adrian smiled and stretched, then his hand found hers under the sheets. He squeezed it gently. He got to the bottom why Ursula was coming with us. Let's lose the yet. Ronnie shook her head. No, she insists she just wants to collect something from her cottage, but I get the sense that she's not telling us the whole truth. Oh, well, her prerogative, I suppose, said Adrian. Now, do you want to sit at the table for breakfast, or shall I bring it in here? How cold is it? How cold is it out there? Asked Ronnie. Instead of answering, Adrian took her hand and placed it on his thigh. Unlike his hands, his legs felt really cold. She shrieked and shook her head. In bed, please. Adrian nodded. It snowed overnight. Depending on the state of the roads, we may even have to wait for a couple of days. What? That's gibberish. Oh dear, hang on. Sorry, I'm playing a silly game. One of them silly farmy simulator things, and it's just telling me my plane's about to take off and I need to load it with brownies. I mean, not dodgy brownies or anything, not the kind that are going to get me arrested. So it says 1 hour 55 still. Oh, piss off, it's got 2 hours. Well, let's see if I can load any anyway. Whilst I'm here. No. Bear with me. Just need to make some cheeseburgers. Right, sorry about that. Ronnie shook head. He wants to collect something from my cottage, but I get the sense she's not telling us the whole truth. Oh, well, now, do you want to sit on the table for breakfast or bring it in here? How could it this, Ronnie? Instead of answering, he took her hand and placed it on his thigh. Unlike his hands, his legs felt really cold. She shrieked and shook her head. In bed, please. Adrian nodded. It snowed overnight. Depending on the state of the roads, we may even have to wait for a couple of days before venturing south. Adrian nodded. It snowed overnight. Depending on the state of the roads, we may even have to wait for a couple of days before venturing south. He let her out of bed and dashed into the other room, closing the door behind him to keep the warmth in. Let's lose the room. Ronnie blew a kiss in Adrian's direction, then lay back contentedly. The last few months had been educational but lovely. Adrian was attentive and caring. She knew their meeting had been blind chance, but she was grateful for it. But she was grateful for it nonetheless. Yeah, that'll do. Hardly made any changes there. So that's page 2 signed off. No, let's do it again. I can make some changes. Yes, Adrian said. Reuben is covering for me in the fields, and Mr. Shaw says we will be releasing 2 more farmers when we're down there anyway. Teams were still regularly travelling south of the border to release people. The number of village residents had almost doubled since Ronnie had come out of hibernation. In a couple of weeks' time, tenants would start to occupy the second village. Some of the first were moving across. It was not populated purely by new people. It was going to take a couple of years before they retrieved all of those in hibernation up and down the country and filled all 3 villages, but it did feel like things were changing every day. The expedition this week was to Mansfield. A while back, Ronnie had asked Idrisil if her friend Laura from university could be one of those saved, and Idrisil had agreed. Ronnie wanted to be there when Laura was revived and was going down with the recovery team. Adrian was going with her, as was Marianne, for a much-needed change of scenery, as well as Ursula and Carruthers. Adrian smiled and stretched, then his hand found hers under the sheets. He squeezed it gently. Have you got to the bottom of why Ursula's coming with us. Ronnie shook her head. No, she insists she wants to collect something from her cottage, but I get the sense she's not telling us the whole truth. Oh well, her prerogative, I suppose, said Adrian. Now, do you want to sit at the table for breakfast today, or shall I bring it in here? How cold is it out there? Asked Ronnie. Instead of answering, he took her hand and placed it on his thigh. Unlike his hands, his legs felt really cold. She shrieked and shook her head. In bed, please. Adrian nodded. It snowed overnight. Depending on the state of the roads, we may even have to wait for a couple of days before venturing south. He leapt out of bed and dashed to the other room, closing the door behind him to keep the warmth in. Adrian blew a kiss in Andrew's direction, then lay back contentedly. The last few months had been educational but lovely. Adrian was attentive. Have I used the word attentive already? Last few months had been educational but lovely. Adrian was attentive and caring. She knew that their meeting had been blind chance, but she was grateful for it nonetheless. Page 2 signed off. Page 3. Both of them were still a little concerned about Marianne. Ronnie's emergence from hibernation had helped their friend a lot. The closeness they'd enjoyed at Forest Lodge steadily grew here, and Marianne's confidence to be themselves was improving. They'd renamed the bakery Marianne's and asked everyone to stop calling them Mark. Most complied, and they started to dress in the way they had before. Their hair was growing back. It was almost as long as Adrian's now. They were still somewhat subdued compared to the person they'd been before the extinction, which everyone called it, despite the fact that it was. This wasn't compared to the person they'd been before the extinction, when everyone called it, despite the fact this was highly inaccurate. Ronnie put that down to concern about Mackenzie. In 5 months, they'd been given no further information about him. He was still in hibernation, and Teresa had not been able to communicate with him. Everyone was concerned. Just use that to worry. The door opened. And Adrian came in with a tray containing toast and fruit and a pitcher of water. He set it down on the bed and they sat together eating. Toast without butter was something Ronnie had never liked before, but now they had those choices. It would be years before the dairy opened. They'd just finished with us a knock on the front door. Adrian motioned to Ronnie to stay in bed, then grabbed a pair of trousers and a top from the floor, pulled them on, then dashed into the other room. He opened the front door to find Marianne waiting outside, hopping from foot to foot in the cold. It was early November, and there was a fresh layer of snow on the ground. They nodded when they saw Adrian. "Can I please come in?" Adrian looked down at them. "Of course you can, but there's a toll. I have to have a hug." Marianne looked up at him with her stern eyes, then the merest glimpse of a smile crossed their lips, and they leaned over to him. Having heard the voice, Ronnie had left the bed, put on her gown, and walked into the living room to see them embracing. "Adrian, will you please accost Marianne with the bloody door closed?" she yelled. Adrian apologised, dragged Marianne in, and shut the door. Ronnie strode over to them, kissed their cheek. And then embraced them. "Can I get you anything?" asked as Adrian as Marianne joined them at the dining table. "Have you had any breakfast? Have you had breakfast?" Let's lose the any. "I'm okay, thanks," Marianne with a nod. "I need to tell you something. I can't come with you to Sherwood." "Oh." Adrian and Ronnie both looked disappointed as they sat on adjacent chairs on the dining table facing Marianne as they continued. the as they continued because of that. Sounds a bit woolly, so I'm just going to lose it. Both of them were still a little concerned about Marianne. Ronnie's emergence from hibernation had helped their friend a lot. The closeness they enjoyed at Forest Lodge steadily grew here. Marianne's confidence to be themselves was improving. That see, I've gendered them. Do that every now and then. Renamed the bakery Marianne's. Everyone stopped calling him Mark. Most complied. And they started to dress in the way they had before. Let's lose that. The hair was growing back. It was almost as long as Adrian's now. They were still somewhat subdued compared to the person they'd been before. The extinction was never caught, despite the fact that was highly inaccurate. But Ronnie put that down to worry about Mackenzie. In 5 months, there had been no further information about him. He was still in hibernation, and the tree said they'd not been able to communicate with him. Everyone was concerned, and Marianne was taking it worse than most. The Robin Adrian came with a tray containing toast and fruit and a pitcher of water. He set it down on the bed, and they sat together eating. Toast without butter was something Ronnie had never liked before, but now they had no choice. It would be years before the dairy opened. They'd just finished when there was a knock on the front door. Adrian motioned to Ronnie to stay in bed, then grabbed a pair of trousers and a top from the floor. Pulled them on, then dashed into the other room. He opened the front door to find Marianne waiting outside, hopping from foot to foot in the cold. It was early November. There was a fresh layer of snow on the ground. They nodded when they saw him. Can I please come in? Adrian looked down at them. Of course you can, but there's a toll. I have to have a hug. Marianne looked at him with stern eyes, then the merest glimpse of a smile crossed their lips, and they leaned over to him. Having heard the voice, Ronnie had left the bed, put on a gown, and walked into the living room to see them embracing. Adrian, will you please accost Marianne with a bloody door closed, she yelled. Adrian apologised, dragged Marianne in and shut the door. Ronnie strode over to them, kissed their cheek, and then embraced them. Can I get you anything? Asked Adrian as Marianne joined them at the dining table. Have you had breakfast yet? I'm okay, thanks, said Marianne with a nod. I need to tell you something. I can't come with you to Sherwood. Oh. Adrian and Ronnie both looked disappointed as they sat on adjacent chairs at the dining table facing Marianne. Page 3 signed off. The tree in the Arboretum informs Mackenzie is going to be released from his hibernation, finally. There's still no proper contact with him, asked Ronnie. Marianne shook their head. I am prepared for what might happen, they said. Hopefully he'll be okay, but I'm ready for the worst. If he dies, it's going to hurt a lot. But I've accepted that it's possible, even likely. They smiled bravely. Ronnie frowned. We can't all go to Sherwood then. Someone needs to be here with you. Marianne shook their head. I knew you'd say that. Honestly, I'll be okay. I found out yesterday that Claire's hibernation is going to end on the same day. It's been suggested if anything bad happens to Mackenzie, I can be her integration partner instead of his, which is very sensible. She'll keep me occupied until you both get back. Adrian shook his head. That feels wrong, he said finally. I have to go, stated Ronnie. I must be with her when Laura comes out of hibernation. Ursula says she needs to visit her college, and you don't seem to. And we don't seem to be able to separate her from. Carruthers these days. I could stay, suggested Adrian. Ronnie stood up from her chair and stood behind him with her arms around his torso. I was going to suggest that, she said, kissing the top of his head. Do you mind? Adrian's halfway through saying, Of course I don't mind. When Marianne shook her head and interrupted. No. You'll be back in a few days. I've psyched myself up for the worst, and Claire's an absolute sweetie. I got to know her quite well those last days at the Arboretum. I'll be okay. Ronnie walked around the table and took their hand. I know you mean what you say, Marianne, but please don't try to be too brave. If something has happened to Mackenzie, it's going to hurt all of us. Hurt. No. No, you're back in a few days. I've set myself up for the worst, and Claire is an absolute sweetie. I got to know her quite well those last days at the Arboretum. I'll be okay. Ronnie walked around the table and took the hand. I know you mean what you say, Marion, but please don't try to be too brave. Something has happened to Mackenzie. It's going to hurt. She squeezed her hand. You did seem more like you, though, again, though. Marion shook her head. I will feel better when my hair goes back fully. But it and I am getting there. Adrian laughed. Suits you more than the buzz cut. Ronnie's eyes widened. They're a buzz cut? She asked, looking to Adrian for confirmation. He nodded. You never told me that. Page 4 signed off. Marion rolled her eyes. Yes, I shaved it all off. It went from halfway down my back to looking and feeling like sandpaper. It was a bit of a shock, said Adrian. It was a mistake, stated Marion. I was in a bad place. But thanks to you, both of you, I'm getting better. It's not the idea of you being alone when Mackenzie is released, said Ronnie. I won't be alone. I'm staying with Kendra from tonight until whatever happens. Maybe beyond if it's bad news. They smiled. Honestly, it's covered. I'll be fine. Once Marianne left, Ronnie packed a bag for herself and Adrian that covered them for a few days. For the few days. They would be. Once Marion left, Ronnie packed a bag for herself and Adrian that covered them for the few days they would be away. Once Marion left, Ronnie packed a bag for herself and Adrian that covered them for the few days that they would be away, and then they walked together into the village. It was Thursday, market day, and the small space was busting with stalls containing food, clothing items, second-hand books, and anything else people needed. There was no money in this new world. It had been a deliberate choice to try and prevent the accumulation of wealth. People took what they needed. It was hard, especially for new people, to get their heads around. Let me do that again. Once Marion left, Ronnie packed a bag for herself and Adrian that covered them for the few days they would be away, and they then started walking together. And they then walked together into the village. It was Thursday, market day, and the small space was bustling with stalls containing food, clothing, second-hand books, and anything else people needed. There was no money in the new world. It had been a deliberate choice to try and prevent the accumulation of wealth. People took strictly what they needed. It was hard, especially for new people, to get their heads around. The new people. It was hard, especially for the newer people, to get their heads around. Revivification expeditions always left from and arrived at. Right back. Revivification expeditions always left from and arrived back at Oakley Hall, and today was no exception. The coach they used was kept in a barn in one of the farms, and it was currently being loaded with supplies for the 5 days it was predicted they would be away. This included clothing for the newcomers to wear as soon as they were released from their hibernation, and cases for them to fill with belongings that they would need with the belongings. They would need for their new lives. Most people were hibernating near to their own homes, where there could very well be bodies of loved ones, so the team going south included those whose job was to get Let's change that to corpses. Most people were hibernating near their homes, where they could very well be corpses of loved ones. So the going south included those whose job was to get the bodies out of sight before the person collected their belongings. Let's lose the from their homes. It was responsibility that Adrian had taken on before Ronnie had been revived. Let's do the paragraph again. Reviews always left from and arrived back at Oakley Hall, and today was no exception. The coach they used was kept in a barn on one of the farms, and it was currently being loaded with supplies for the 5 days. It was predicted they would be away. Need to be. Revivification expeditions always left from and arrived back at Oakley Hall, and today was no exception. The coach they used was kept in a barn on one of the farms, and it was currently being loaded with supplies for the 5 days we predicted they would be away. This included clothing for the newcomers to wear as soon as they were released from the hibernation, and cases for them to fill with the belongings that they would need for their new lives. Most people were hibernating near to their own homes, where they could very well be corpses of loved ones, so the team going south included those whose job was to get the bodies out of sight before the person collected their belongings. It was responsible that Adrian had taken on before. Adrian had been revived. One of the. Responsibilities that Adrian had taken on before Ronnie had been revived. The original idea had been to get everyone up to the Cairngorms with their possession well before the extinction took place. These would be stored in the vast underground warehouses that made up the Alpha site as the individuals hibernated trees somewhere nearby in the national park. Survivors would still have been revived at a slow rate. Infrastructure had been placed before the numbers grew, but these expeditions south had not been part of the original plan, although the contingency had been catered for. Officer and his team had been meticulous in their forward planning, trying to have a strategy for all inventories, including this one. Right, that's fine. Page 6. Oliver Shaw was heading their team today. Oliver Shaw was heading their team today. Apart from Ronnie and her friends, there were a total of 12 men and women on the coach. As there were since. There were 20 people to be revived in the Mansfield area. Each team member, both on their own task on the expedition, would act as a re-engagement part of 2 of the newly revived. Let's lose the word people. Some of them would have known it was coming because there'd been time to brief them before Scott dragged them into hibernation, but of the men and women they were reviving today, half of them had no idea at all. Laura Robinson from University fell into that category. Let's do that again. Oliver was heading their team today. Apart from Ronnie and friends, there was a total of 12 men and women on the coach, since there were 20 people due to be revived from the Mansfield area. Each team member, as well as performing their own tasks on the expedition, would act as an integration partner to 2 of the newly revived. Some of them would have known it was coming because there'd been time to brief them before school dragged them into hibernation. But the men and women they were reviving today, half of them had no idea at all. Laura, Ronnie's friend from university, fell into that category. Carruthers swore as he lugged his and Ursula's case into the market square, and the coach driver, a grim-faced man from Newcastle called Clive, helped him load the bags into the lower storage bays. Next one Adrian just handed over from him and Ronnie. Carruthers helped Ursula up the steps, note that Ronnie and Adrian not boarded yet. "What are you bloody waiting for?" he demanded. "Marianne's coming to see us off," replied Ronnie. Carruthers shrugged and followed Ursula up the steps. A few moments later, Marianne and Kendra Briley entered the market square and made a beeline for the coach. "Good luck," said Marianne as she embraced Ronnie. "To you too," replied Ronnie. "Do you know exactly when Mackenzie will come out of his hibernation?" Marianne looked to Kendra, who said, "We don't think it'll be today, tomorrow or Sunday, or Saturday most likely." Ronnie squeezed Marianne again. I'm looking forward to seeing him. I'm sure it'll be okay. She was not sure if she was telling the truth, but it was what Marianne needed to hear. We will radio as soon as we know anything, replied Kendra. You won't have to wait until you get back. Thank you, said Adrian. He put his arms around Marianne and put his forehead to hers. Look after yourself, he whispered before pulling away and kissing Kendra on the cheek. Then he helped. He's a right little flirt, isn't he? Then he helped Ronnie up the coach steps. The journey was due to last at least 10 hours. The drive down took them via the Alpha site where they would fill the coach with fuel, and at some point on the trip they would have to visit another fuel dump, a strategically placed fuel tanker, on this occasion near Penrith. Page 6 signed off. The road out of Scotland had been traversed many times by the various revivification expeditions, so they knew that there were no challenges there. The road was clear right down to the border just north of Carlisle. The very first expedition, which Adrian had been on, felt like a trek into the unknown, but in most cases the roads had been clear. They had needed to winch a few trees and vehicles out of the way, but the coach was fitted with the equipment to do just that, so it had not been a problem. They still needed to move the occasional tree, even on the roads they knew well. They had previously traversed. Which probably sounds better. Paragraph again. I'm doing paragraph sign off rather than page because it's quicker. The road out of Scotland had been traversed many times. I'm going to say used because I've already got traversed in the paragraph. The road had been traversed many times with the various revivification expeditions, so they knew there were no challenges there. The road was clear right down to the border just north of Carlisle. The very first expedition which Adrian had been on felt like a trek into the unknown, but in most cases the roads had been clear. They needed to winch a few trees and vehicles out of the way. The coach was fitted with equipment. But the coach was fitted with equipment to do just that, so it had not been a problem. They still need to move the occasional tree, even on the roads that they had previously used. They set off at just after 7 o'clock. The morning sun was bright and frost covered the ground, so Clive drove carefully. Things that people used to take for granted before the extinction, such as gritted roads, no longer occurred, no longer happened. They set off at just after 7 o'clock. The morning sun was bright and frost covered the ground, so Clive drove carefully. Things that people used to take for granted before the extinction, such as gritting the roads. That's why that doesn't sound right. They set off just after 7 o'clock. The morning sun was bright and frost covered the ground, so Clive drove carefully. Things that people used to take for granted. I think that could be a separate sentence, actually. They set off just after 7 o'clock. The morning sun was bright and frost covered the ground, so Clive drove carefully. Things people used to take for granted before the extinction, such as gritting the roads, no longer happened. Oliver Shaw was Clive's relief driver. When they got to Glasgow, which took about 5 hours, they swapped over. The original estimated arrival time had been 5 o'clock in the evening, but about 4 hours into the drive, Clive told everyone that this was looking rather optimistic. Soon eventually made a stop for the night at Penrith. The kit in the coach included tents with sleeping bags. Two men responsible for rating them did so quickly. This is why Adrian says this was one of his... Also being one of his tasks when he had been on the team. They set up 5 tents in a semicircle away from the coach and cooked some beans and other tinned foods over an open fire before going to sleep. They were up again at first light, the tents were packed away and the journey continued. Let's see the paragraph again. The decision was eventually made to stop for the night at Penrith. The kit in the coach included tents with sleeping bags. The two men responsible for erecting them did so quickly. This is what Adrian says had also been one of his tasks when he'd been on the team. They set up 5 tents in a semicircle away from the coach and cooked some beans and other tinned foods over an open fire before going to sleep. They were up again at first light, the tents were packed away and the journey continued. Yay! It was the first time they'd been on it was the first time they'd not been on a relatively straight road on the journey, and Clive had not been keen to drive. The road after Penrith, I think, is probably. The road after Penrith was the first time they'd not been on a relatively straight road. It was the first time so far. And Clive had been keen. That's Larira. Clive had been keen. The road after Penrith has not been on relatively straight. Oh, hello. Sorry. Yeah, I'm not even aware of that. I'll have a look later. Yeah, I'm determined, not desperate, to sign this off today because then I've hit my targets for the month and I don't have to do anything for the next 3 days and I'm working quite heavily. So I've got 3 flights tomorrow and 3 flights the day after. So yeah, I shall just crack and see on. Actually, the beginning, I'd forgotten to change my setup. So I come on and the barcode or QR code isn't there and it says Bow Street Society at the top. So I was like, oh yes, this was something you'll see on Friday. Just need to change it around. The road after Penrith was the first... say path. The road after Penrith was the first time they'd not been on a relatively straight path so far on the journey, and Clive had not been keen to drive. And Clive had been keen not to drive this road after dark. Let's read that again. The road after Penrith was the first time they'd not been on a relatively straight path so far on the journey, and Clive had been keen not to drive this road after dark. Yeah, the A66 linked to the M6 they'd been on and the A1 that they wanted to get to. Once on the A1, the road was a 3-lane highway most of the way down to Mansfield. The last 10 miles or so was new to all of them, but the road was in good condition. There was one point where they had to carefully manoeuvre around an articulated lorry that crashed into a wall. Let's lose the along the road, because obviously it's along the road. It wouldn't be in a swimming pool, would it? There was one point where they had to carefully manoeuvre around an articulated that crashed into a wall, but they managed it without incident or resorting to the winch. Let's just do that paragraph again. The road after Penrith was the first time they'd not been on a relatively straight path so far on the journey, and Clive had been keen not to drive this road after dark. The A66 linked the M6 that they'd been on and the A1 that they wanted to get to. Once on the A1, the road was 3-lane highway most of the way down to Mansfield. The last 10 miles or so was new to all of them, but the road was in good condition. There was one point they had to carefully move around and articulate, look that crashed into a wall, but they managed it without incident or resorting to the winch. Lovely. Clive stopped the coach in a supermarket car park close to Mansfield town centre, which brought lots of memories back for Ronnie because she had purchased her groceries here a number of times in her student days. There'd been civil unrest before the oxygen ran out. Most of the windows were smashed and the shelves that they could see from outside had been emptied. Oh, that's it. Yay, page 7 signed off. Page 8. The team mechanics, Paul and India, scouted the local area for the cars that they could get started, and then 5 teams of 2 drove off to find and revive their 4 people. Each team had a radio with them, and the mechanics, let's lose the had. The mechanics had a working car for Clive and Oliver Shaw, who would go out and meet the other teams in the event of a problem. It was a rule that nobody should ever be left alone. Adrian and Ronnie got into their car with Carruthers as well as Ursula, who'd met Laura. I don't need to say that because if you've read it, you'll know that. You might have forgotten because it was a long time ago, but I don't think I need to state that. Laura and Roy got into the car with Carruthers as well as Ursula. The tree that Laura was hibernating was on the grounds of Mendell House. From the location the map indicated, Ronnie was certain that the witches their halls of residence, which again you'd know if you've been reading it. Adrian and Ronnie got into their car with Carruthers as well as Ursula. Let's just say Carruthers and. It's just a bit long-winded, isn't it? Adrian and Ronnie got into the car with Carruthers and Ursula. The tree that Laura was hibernating in was on the grounds of Mendell House. From the location the map indicated, Ronnie was certain the tree in question was an oak that was to the left of the main entrance to the halls of residence. Adrian started the car and 10 minutes later pulling into the car park. Ronnie felt a shiver as they drove into the familiar place. The grass was overgrown and there were some weeds pushing through the tarmac in some of the parking spaces, but it still felt terribly familiar. From her point of view, she'd only been here a year ago. Ronnie directed Adrian to the front door and he parked the car to the main door. Entrance instead of front door. Ronnie directed Adrian to the main entrance and he parked the car in front of it, pulling on the handbrake. He looked across at Ronnie, who was looking apprehensive. "You don't need to come in, love." Ronnie grimaced. "I do," she said quietly. "We need to put some stuff together for Laura, and you don't know where her room is. It's a bit of a maze in there." Adrian nodded. "Okay then, but take me straight there. Don't open any doors that you don't need to." Ronnie nodded. "Would you like us to trigger the young lady's release, dear?" asked Ursula as she stepped out of the back seat of the car. "Do you know which tree it is?" Ronnie asked. Carruthers was examining the map. He pointed to the large oak at the side of the building. "I imagine it's that one." "Yes," replied Ronnie, as she and Adrian climbed the steps up to Mendell House. "But wait until we're back, please." Part of the kit that had been transferred into the boot of the stolen car was a heavy red battering ram, the type used by the police to break down doors. Ronnie said that she doubted they would need it, as the front door to Mendell had never been locked in her memory, as far as she remembered. At least as far as she remembered. She was right. When she tried the handle, it moved. Adrian pushed the door fully open and an unpleasant smell drifted out of them. Ronnie dry heaved and Adrian shook his head. "Are you sure you want to come in?" "Yep, that's good." Ronnie's face had gone pale. "Is that smell what I think it is?" Adrian nodded apologetically. "I'm afraid so. Let's get where we need to as quickly as possible. Grab my hand and run, but make sure you're looking where you're going. Where you are stepping, treading. And let's put an abbreviation in there. If there are any bodies on the route, we will have to stop whilst I suit up and move them. Let's do that again. Adrian nodded apologetically. I'm afraid so. Let's get where we need to. Let's lose the second get. Let's get where we need to as quickly as possible. Grab my hand and run, but make sure you're looking. Compaction. Let's contract that as well. Make sure you're looking where you're treading. If there are any bodies on the route, we'll have to stop whilst they suit up and move them. Ronnie gave him a thumbs up, putting on a pretense at bravado. They walked into the... Ronnie gave him a thumbs up, putting on a pretense at bravado. They walked into the entrance lobby and through a second pair of doors. A corridor, not a corridors. Bloody hell, I've read this already apparently. I do see more on paper. Oh, so I called WordPress site through them. Okay, it's yeah, I like WordPress. It's so easy it's so adaptable. You can add stuff, take it away. You can even have a link directly to a page from your newsletter, which you can't access without that link. You know, so you can have a bit just for your newsletter people. Yeah, you could literally set it so it's not linked to from the site, but you can, yeah, put the link in a newsletter or something like that. Ronnie gave him a thumbs up, putting on the pretense bravado. They walked into the entrance lobby and through a second pair of doors. A corridor ran off in both directions. Ronnie grabbed Adrian's hand and led him down the corridor to the right. They came to a set of fire doors which Adrian cautiously pushed open, and Ronnie turned left. Mercifully, there had been no bodies thus far. Yeah, that's fine. I'll do what I can. Mercifully, there had been no bodies thus far, but the smell, not this smell. The smell was getting worse. She continued along the corridor, past one turning to the right, and took the second. She stopped at the third door on the right. This was Laura's when I was here anyway. It may have changed. When I opened the door carefully and looked into the room, nothing was familiar. Judging from the state of it and of the dirty box shorts strewn over the floor, it was a boys' room. It was now a boys' room. Oh, cool. Yeah. I can't remember what I said. Oh, basically stuff I said in the podcast, I think, wasn't it? Basically. Yeah. Ronnie gave him a thumbs up in pretence of bravado. They walked into the entrance lobby and through a second pair of doors. A corridor ran off in both directions. Ronnie grabbed Adrian's hand and led him down the corridor to the right. They came to a set of fire doors, which I shall say he, because I've said Adrian quite a lot, which he cautiously pushed open, and Ronnie turned left. Mercifully, there had been no bodies thus far, but the smell was getting worse. She continued along the corridor, past one turning to the right, and took the second. She stopped at the third door. Do I need to say on the right? I'm just going to say at the third door. This was Laura's when I was here anyway. It may have changed. Ronnie opened the door carefully and looked into the room. Nothing was familiar. Judging from the state of it, I'm going to lose the comments about dirty boxer short. Judging from the state of it, it was now a boys' room. Ronnie backed out, shaking head. Not this one, then. We can't check them all, but I have a hunch. She directed them to a parallel corridor and pointed to another door. Non-writing question for you. My sister wants... Yeah, go for it. Ronnie backed out, shaking head. Not this one, then. We can't check them all out, but I have a hunch. She directed them to a parallel corridor and pointed to another door. That was Danny's. I can't bear to look in there. But the one opposite was mine. She moved over to the door in question. They would have had to reallocate it when I left. which would have upset Danny. Laura probably offered to take it on to reduce the impact on him. She's lovely like that. She opened the door and peered into the gloomy space. On the table next to the bed, she saw a photograph of Laura and Danny. Bingo, she cried before emotions crashed over like a wave and she felt forced to dash out of the room. She ran up the corridor and stopped by the entrance to the common room. Adrian stepped out, intending to follow her, but she motioned him away. I just need a moment, she said. The photo on the table, that was Laura and Danny. I don't know, she wants to know. Plans making a landing on water. Is this escape slide deployed? And if it is, are rafts also deployed? Right, so the proper name for the escape slide is slide raft. So the same bit of kit does both. It's a slide if you're on the land, it's a raft if you're on water. Basically. So in the same way that when you open a door in automatic in an emergency situation, so do all the passengers get on the slide? Yeah, it's literally a raft. It's literally a big raft. We've even got canopies and rods and canopies so we can cover it over. There's water, depending on which aircraft you're on. There's survival kits. There's a water purifier so you can actually pump seawater out and it turns it into drinking water. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Let's hope I never have to use one. But yes, it's called a slide raft. And would you have to put the canopies? And yes, you would obviously because yeah. But it's all attached. So basically, when it deploys, there's a bag at the side which you attach by rope, which you fish out of the water. That's got the canopy and the poles to erect the canopy and instructions. Because clearly we don't do it very often. So it'll probably be IKEA. You as the cabin crew. Well, unless something's gone very horribly wrong and there isn't a cabin crew member on that particular raft. But the idea is, yes, so each door has a crew member on it, unless something has happened to them on the way. Yes. Is there more than one raft? Yeah, there's 8. There's one for every door. So on most aircraft, there's 8. On the A3... So there's enough for everybody. There's literally enough for everybody. I might have some pictures somewhere. Hang on. Let me go back to that screen and see if I can find a picture. It'll be off Tinternet, but see if I can find one. No. There's so basically every door that would have a slide on it, the slide is also a raft. So let me just switch you to. So that's a picture of a raft deployed on, well, the one to the right, the big one is from a 777. And depending on which aircraft you are on, so the big one, ignore the little one at the side, I don't know why that picture's there, but the big one, literally, you can fit about 50 people on it. And there's, in fact, you wouldn't need to fit 50 people on it because there's, well, on a 777-300, the biggest one we have, there are 8 of those slides. There are 6 actually on the smaller one because it would depends. No, sorry, yeah, there's 8 of those slides. There's 8 on normal ones as well. Actually, ignore me. So the ones with 5 doors, the middle door tends to be over a wing, and obviously you can't have a slide then. But yeah, so you can see the bits at the side. It floats. You detach it from the aircraft. There are actually mooring lines and the paddles as well. So assuming you all survive this, which isn't very likely, I'm not going to lie, but assuming you've got 8 rafts full of people, you can actually paddle them next to each other. How is it deployed? So it's deployed automatically. So you may have heard, you've flown, haven't you? So you know when they say doors to automatic and cross-check. Automatic means the slide will deploy when you open the door. That's what it means. Whether it's being used as a raft or a slide. So that's what doors to automatic means. So, however, of course, automatic systems do sometimes not work. So there is also a handle that you can pull that deploys it automatically. So we are trained when we open the door in an emergency situation to pull that handle just in case, because it could save you vital seconds. You pull the handle just in case it hasn't deployed. So yeah, and that's it. And then you get everybody on. You detach it. You put the canopy rods up. We also have I can't remember what they're called, but you know, the beacons. We have one attached to the aeroplane. So if the aeroplane goes down, it automatically starts transmitting the emergency signal. And we have two that, again, depending on which door you're at, one of your bits of responsibility in a ditching situation would be to take the emergency beacon off with you. So yes, and as I say, you can have up to 8 rafts deployed. It's likely the aircraft, not immediately, but it is likely the aircraft would sink, but obviously they do detach. One of the other slightly less happy things we have to do, so if we had this situation where we looked like we were going to have to ditch into the sea, or indeed any emergency landing, whether it's on land or in the sea, one of the things I have to do as a member of crew is find someone who is what we call an able-bodied passenger, or ABP. There are 3 criteria. They have to be able to speak English. They have to be travelling alone, because you don't want someone who's got a family to worry about, and they have to be willing to help. And basically, in an emergency situation, once we've briefed everybody on what might happen, we then have to brief our able-bodied passenger. And one of the things we do is we brief them how to deploy the raft if the automatic systems don't work. So, yeah. In case your crew member's dead, we train someone, we ask a passenger to do that. You know, be ready to do that for us in case something happens to us. Very cheerful, but you've got to cover eventualities, haven't you? So, but yes, so that's the answer. Not sometimes to make sure the coast is clear. Then, no. But yeah, so say 777-300, which takes about, I'm trying to remember how many passengers we have on this configuration, but it's nearly 300. So with 8 rafts, you're looking at 150 people across 4 rafts. So what's that? About 40 on each raft. There might be sharks, off you go. But the reality is, if you survive the landing, we've got the emergency beacons. The canopies are bright orange, you know, the kind of thing you would see from above. So if you survive the landing, there's quite a good chance you're going to be okay. Surviving the landing isn't massively likely, not going to lie, particularly on bigger aeroplanes, because you have to get the angle just right. The sea has to be flat, because if it's not and it grabs hold of one of the wings, then the plane will tip over on one side. I can't tell that story. I'll tell you that story when we're not online. But we had a briefing when I was very, very new, and we have safety topics in the briefing, and the one was ditching. And yeah, I can't tell the rest of the story, but I'll tell you in person, because it is quite amusing. Right, where am I? So does that answer all the questions you had? You definitely not want to fly again? Don't tell your story, period. Okay, I'll not do that then. But the punchline was, yes, it's the fucking Atlantic Ocean, dear, not the Hudson River. You can guess where it was going. Ronnie backed out, shaking her head. Not this one, then. We can't check them all, but I have a hunch. She directed them to a parallel corridor and pointed to another door. That was Danny's. I can't bear to look in there. But the one opposite was mine. She moved over to the door in question. They would have had to reallocate it when I left, which would have upset Danny. Laura probably offered to take it on to reduce the impact on him. She's lovely like that. She opened the door and peered into the gloomy space. Oh, yes, sorry. I would have realised when I came to change anything. On the table next to the bed, she saw a photograph of Laura and Danny. Bingo, she cried before emotions crashed over her like a wave before her emotions before her emotions. Do I need to say like a wave? I probably don't. We'll get the metaphor. And she felt forced to dash out of the room. And she dashed out of the room? Before emotions crashed over her and she dashed out of the room. She ran up the corridor and stopped by the entrance to the common room. Adrian stepped out, intending to follow her, but she motioned him away. I just need a moment, she said. The photo on the table, that was Laura and Danny. Adrian nodded with understanding. Sorry, are you? Rodney nodded fastly. I'll be fine. I think Laura has a suitcase in her wardrobe. Adrian gestured with his thumbs up. I'll find it. I won't be long. Ronnie watched him go back into the room without thinking, opened the door to the common room. The sight made her gag. The room was full of corpses, most of them unclothed. She could see drink bottles on tables at the side of the room. The smell from the room, let's lose the from the room. The smell was appalling, but the decoms and the, not but. This is because apparently, without oxygen, bearing in mind there's not been much oxygen in the atmosphere for a while, decomposition is much slower. And the decomposition of the bodies was not as advanced as 3 years would suggest. There was not point the decomposition was not as advanced as you would expect after 3 years. Not as advanced as you would expect after 3 years. Most still had tight skin around their bones. There was one lying face down on a mattress that had a familiar tattoo on its lower back. She closed the door again, thinking of the last time she'd seen Erica Yates alive, and threw up on the floor. Adrian was by her side in a moment, holding her hand and patting her back. Let's do that chapter again. Ronnie watched him go back into the room, and without thinking opened the door to the common room. The sight made her gag. The room was full of corpses, most of them unclothed. She could see drinks bottles on tables at the side of the room. The smell was appalling, and the decomposition of the bodies was not as advanced as you would expect after 3 years. Most still had tight skin around their bones. There was one lying face down on a mattress that had a familiar tattoo on its lower back. She closed the door again, thinking of the last time she'd seen Erica Yates alive, and threw up on the floor. Adrian was by her side in a moment, holding her hand and patting her back. Page 9 signed off. She stood fully upright after a few minutes. I'm sorry, she said. Adrian grinned ruefully. I did tell you not to look. Ronnie grimaced and held on to him. You did. I'm sorry. He kissed her forehead. Don't apologise. Is that where the smell is coming from? Yes. I think most of them are in there. I don't think anyone here died alone. Adrian took her hand. Come on then, let's get out of here. I think I can find my way back and I'll have Laura with me. Hand in hand they went back to where they'd come. She's doing okay, said Kendra to Marianne. Kendra took one more look at the girl sleeping in the recovery bed. Claire's hair was still very short, but the damage that had been done by the long needles from Carl Tucker's crown. She's doing okay, said Kendra to Marianne. Kendra took one more look at the girl sleeping in the recovery bed. Claire's hair was still very short, but the damage had been done by the long needles from Carl Tucker's crown had repaired completely. Claire had been confused when she woke, which was often the way, and they had brought her here. I don't need to say close to the Arboretum. We know it's close to the Arboretum if you've read the last couple of chapters. From a tree in small van, Kendra closed the door to the recovery room behind them. Let's do that again. She's doing a case of Kendra to Marianne. Kendra took one more look at the girl sleeping in the recovery bed. Claire's hair was still very short, but the damage that had been done by the long needles from Carl Tucker's crown had repaired completely. Claire refused when she was off on the way. They'd brought her here bought her. Let's lose the here. Bought her from her tree in a small van. Kendra closed the door to the recovery room. Just Mackenzie now, said Marianne. Kendra patted her shoulder. Are you ready? Marianne shook her head. No. I'll go and hand over to the recovery nurse. Then we'd better get back to the Arboretum. As she was about to walk away, Marianne tapped her shoulder. Kendra turned back. In the event that... Marianne faltered. Kendra took the hand and they continued, clearly finding it hard to say the words. If he's not with us, what will happen? Kendra swallowed. We'll still bring him here. If he's breathing but unresponsive, ultimately the medical council will have to make a difficult decision. You'll kill him. Kendra squeezed Marianne's hand. Euthanasia is a strong likelihood, I'm afraid. Under those circumstances, I think it would be a kindness. Marianne nodded. If that happens, I want to be there. I want to hold his hand. Let's do that little bit again. She's doing okay, said Kendra to Marianne. Kendra took one more look at the girl sleeping in the recovery bed. Claire's hair was still very short, but the damage that had been done by the long needles from Carl Tucker's crown had repaired completely. Claire had been confused when she woke, which was often the way. They had bought her from a tree in a small van. Kendra closed the door to the recovery room behind them. Just Mackenzie now, said Marianne. Kendra patted her shoulder. Are you ready? Marianne shook her head. No. I'll go and hand over to the recovery nurse. Thank you. Yeah, I'll probably record that as soon as I've done this. As she was about to walk away, Marianne tapped her shoulder. Kendra turned back. In the event that Marianne faltered, Kendra took the hand and they continued. Let's lose the clearly. Finding it hard to say the words. If he's not with us, what will happen? Kendra swallowed. We'll still bring him here if he's breathing but unresponsive. Ultimately, the medical council will have a difficult decision. We have to make a difficult decision. You'll kill him. Kendra squeezed Marianne's hand. Euthanasia is a strongly likelihood, I'm afraid. Under those circumstances, I think it would be a kindness. I think it would be a kindness. I think it would be kind. No, if that happens, I want to be there. I want to hold his hand. Oh, how sweet. Right. Kendra turned away. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, love. I'll see you outside. Kendra dashed. Let's just lose that. Kendra turned away. I just hope it doesn't come to that, love. I'll see you outside. Marianne shook the head, headed towards the exit and the waiting vehicle. The van pulled up in the car park next to the east doors that led through to the Arboretum. The canvas dome that once completely covered the imprisoned tree had deteriorated. Enormously. The van pulled up in the car park next to the east doors that led through to the Arboretum. The canvas dome that once completely covered the imprisoned tree had deteriorated enormously. Fungus was growing on the material, and there were lots of holes in the dull grey surface. The recovery team, which consisted of Kendra and one other member of the medical staff, entered through the airlock door, which had been open since they were last here. Kendra held a medical bag, and the male nurse carried a rolled stretcher. Okay. Marianne looked around the interior of the arboretum once they entered the room. Once they entered the room. Marianne, once they entered. They'd been used to artificial lighting in what had previously been such a sterile place, but there was none now. The only lighting... Hey Siri, synonyms for lighting.
Synonyms for lighting include set alight, set light to, and fire.
Yeah, no. Let's say illumination. Manuel ran into the arboretum. Obviously, once they tried to look around it before. Manuel ran into the arboretum. They'd been used to artificial lighting in what had previously been such a sterile space, but there was... No lights now. The only illumination. The only illumination came from the holes in the dome, of which there were a lot more than there seemed from the outside. The light was dull. They did not need the torches they brought with them. They could see a line of fungal growth leading from the holes in the sides of the canvas. It was no random. The trees on the outside deliberately attacked the dome and reconnected their missing tree. And reconnected with, that's better. Well, let's do that paragraph again. Marianne looked around the interior of the arboretum. They'd been used to artificial lighting in what had previously been such a sterile space, but there were no lights now. The only illumination came from the holes in the dome, of which there were a lot more than there seemed from the outside. The light was dull, but they did not need the torches they'd brought with them. They could see a line of fungal growths leading from the holes in the side of the canvas, rung along the floor and connecting directly with the tree. It was no random happenstance. The trees on the outside had deliberately attacked the dome and connected with their missing. Hey Siri, synonyms for person.
Synonyms for person include human being, individual, and man-woman.
To attack the dome and reconnected with the missing individual. Marianne walked slowly up to the tree. The bark that had been missing from the surface had largely grown back, and the tree had managed to expel the large spikes that had been driven into its surface to connect it to the computer in order to connect it to the computer. Surgical bed that both Claire and Mackenzie had been strapped to was still in the corner, but it was now filthy and covered with mould. I assume anyone can touch the tree to activate the recovery process, asked Marianne. They were whispering. as though they were standing in a holy space. "Yes," replied Kendra quietly, "but it should be you." "Now?" "Now." Marion walked slowly up to the surface of the tree, the head filled with memories and emotions. The pulse increased rapidly. Yeah, see, I've written rapidly increased. Pulse increased rapidly, took a few deep breaths before raising their right hand and bringing it to the surface. They touched the bark gently and felt something. They were not sure what. The surface did not raise itself around the edge of their fingers, as happened when she'd seen Ronnie do it, but they felt a distinct sensation. They took their hand away. It was clean, and took a step back. They all watched the surface of the trunk. At first, nothing much seemed to be happening, but then it started to swell. It reminded Marianne of a pregnant stomach. Of Ronnie's. Over a few minutes, the area swelled. Hey Siri, synonyms for swelled.
Synonyms for swelled include expand, bulge, and distend.
Expanded. The wood surface of the trunk. At first, nothing much seemed to be happening, but then it started to swell. In one moment of pregnancy, over a few minutes, the area expanded until it was the size of a person, and then it seemed as though someone rapidly unzipped the middle, and a very skinny, sap-covered figure toppled out. Marianne caught Mackenzie, and Kendra helped them carry him over to the stretcher. Marion looked down at the figure as Kendra covered his nakedness with a blanket. They could see that his chest was rising and falling slowly. They got onto their knees and took his hand. "Mackenzie, Mackenzie," they whispered, "can you hear me?" Mackenzie's eyes opened wide. He looked absolutely terrified. Marion took his hand gently and squeezed it. He looked up at them and his breathing slowed somewhat. He smiled and his head fell back. He closed his eyes and the grip on Marianne's hand relaxed. "Come on, let's get him back," said Kendra. She and the nurse picked up the stretcher and started carrying Mackenzie through the door and towards the van. Marion took one last look around the arboretum and shook their head. They would never see this terrible place again. Marion walked alongside. Walked alongside the stretcher, watching Mackenzie's, not his. Form as they carried him outside. Like Claire, his hair was very short, and Marion could see that the puncture marks from the crown had gone. They watched as the medics gently loaded him into the van. The nurse climbed in behind him, and Kendra just Marion to get into the front passenger seat. "He recognised me," said Marion, just as Kendra was about to climb into the driving seat. "He definitely recognised me." They paused. "That's good, right?" "It's good," Kendra affirmed with a smile, and watched as tears started to roll down Marianne's cheeks. "Come on, let's take him home." Adrian and Ronnie left Mendel by the main door, then turned right until the end of the building. Adrian stopped. Adrian stopped the car. Adrian and Ronnie left Mendel by the main door, then turned right until they were at the end of the building. That needs to be I'm going to have a brief break in a minute. Adrian and Ronnie left Mendel by the main door, then turned right until they were at the end of the building. Adrian stopping at the car on the way to grab a large sports bag. Ronnie joined Ursula and Cruthers at the oak she had indicated earlier. Ursula was standing with her eyes closed, but she opened at the sound of Ronnie's approach. "Are you ready, dear?" she asked. So that's page 12 signed off. I'm going to do page 13, and then I need to grab something to eat, so I'll be back very quickly. Ronnie inclined her head. So Ursula stepped forwards and laid her hand on the surface of the tree. A few moments later, it bulged, and eventually a form was expelled. Adrian caught the naked, dark-haired. And walked her across the car, urging everyone else to step away from the branches. The tree seemed to turn grey a few seconds after its inhabitants released, but none of the branches. He was nearly wrong. Ron inclined her head, so stepped forward and laid her hand on the surface of the tree. Say limbs. Initially, Laura was unaware of what was happening, but she screamed and kicked out when she realised she had no clothes on. Ronnie opened the sports bag that Adrian had taken from the boot and placed a large black and took a large black dressing gown from it. Adrian set Laura's feet on the ground, careful not to look at her body. I don't need to say that. We don't think he's a perv. It's over to her. "Hey, Laura." Sorry, let's do that. Laura was unaware of what was happening, but she screamed to get when she realised she had no clothes on. Ran over the sport bag that Adrian had taken from the boot and took a large black dressing gown from it. Adrian set Laura's feet on the ground as Ronnie rushed over to her. "Hey, Laura, put this on." She handed the robe to the trembling girl, who grabbed it angrily and wrapped it around herself. She then looked up furiously at Ronnie and was about to yell at her when she looked at her face properly for the first time. Her expression turned from one of anger to one of sheer astonishment. "Ronnie!" But Ronnie stepped closer and ensured that Laura was not going to swing at her, hugged her. Laura shook her head, stunned, and after a few seconds returned the embrace. "What's going on? You're dead." Ronnie shook her head. "As you can see, I'm not." Laura took a step back and then looked at her again. "You're pregnant?" Her face paled. Is Danny the father?" Adrian looked at her intensely. This was something she was going to have to explain to him, but now was not the time. "No," she said. That was a bit I added because I thought that would be her. "Where am I?" Laura looked around her and recognised the car park at Mendel. "Oh, where's everyone else?" Ronnie took a hand, which was still sticky, and squeezed it. "What do you remember?" Laura looked wobbly, so Adrian opened the passenger door of their appropriated car, and Ronnie guided her down into the seat. We were all waiting to die. I think I started to hallucinate. Eric came to check on me, came to see me, to check that I was okay. And then a tree creature broke into the room and carried me away. It looked like you, Ronnie. Ronnie raised eyebrows. It did it? What else? I'm not sure, said Laura. Adrian, meanwhile, had opened the boot of the car and took a flask out. Taken. Page 13 signed off. Right, bear with me. I'm going to turn the microphone off. Let me just shoot over to this screen. So I'm going to turn the microphone off for a second and just stick a Be Right Back thing on that looks like that. It's got lots of photographs in it for you to look at. They're all very exciting. I think I took them all. Right, microphone off. I'll be back in a couple of minutes. Right, I'm back. Ugh. Right, we continue. I'm gonna have to eat as well. So I'm hungry. Right, hungry. Not hangry yet. We don't want that to happen. Where are we? Let's do another test message. It's been a while. Drink this, he said. It will replace a lot of your missing nutrients. He twisted the top off and handed it to her. She took a sip. It's very sweet, she said, before taking another large swig. Then she turned back to Ronnie. I don't know what happened next. I passed out when that thing carried me away. Then some voices spoke to me saying I was safe. Saying that I was safe and that someone... Oh. Hang on, I'm on the wrong screen now. I'll do that one. And someone come and fetch me when... And I awoke. She shuddered. I assumed that was either a dream or hallucination too. I assumed that was probably for the first time and noticed the overgrown grounds. What happened here? Did they sack the groundskeeper? Ronnie squatted in front of her. You've been hibernating. The sticky stuff all over your body, that's the internal fluid from the tree that you slept in. Laura looked bewildered. Slept in? What? Everyone was dying. I'm so confused. Ronnie squeezed her hand. Almost everyone died, Laura. You're one of the designated survivors. You've been asleep for almost 3 years. What? How come I'm still alive? Ronnie gestured to the growing tree at the edge of the car park. The tree sacrificed itself to save you. I don't understand. The motion moment caught up with her. She started to cry. I will explain when you've had a moment, said Ronnie gently. In the meantime, we need to go to your room and pack the thing and pack anything you want. Pack anything you might need. Anything you need. To pack anything you want or need. Pack anything you need. I'm going to join a settlement with the rest of the survivors. It's a long way away, I'm afraid, in Scotland. We will leave later today. And we'll hopefully get there tomorrow evening. Thought crossed Laura's mind. What happened to Danny? She asked. A mournful look crossed Ronnie's face. That was another detailed conversation that was not for today. He's gone, she said sadly. I'm desperately sorry. I loved him as much as you did. She blinked away tears and wiped her eyes with the back of her sleeve. Laura shook her head. I think I knew that he was gone. Adrian, no, that's Ronnie, and in front of Laura. I'm Adrian. Sorry to push you. We need to go and get your stuff. It won't be very nice. The smell inside is rather unpleasant. He rested his hand on Ronnie's shoulder and squeezed it. There's nothing awful to see between here and your room. We've already checked. Let's get your things and get you away from here. Page 14 signed off. Need sandwich in gob. He held out his hand, and Laura looked to Ronnie for affirmation, who nodded. Laura gripped Adrian's hand and helped to her feet. We'll come with you. Under a pair of slippers from the sports bag, he dropped on the floor and slipped on her feet. Then you'll explain what happened, Laura asked. I have a long journey, said Laura. I can tell you anything you want during that. Come on. Laura, her legs stiff from lack of use, hobbled up the stairs to the front door, sandwiched between Ronnie and Adrian. All three entered, and the door swung closed behind them. Ursula smiled after them. One down, she muttered to herself. Eh? What? Carruthers asked. Nothing, dear. We will go to my cottage next. Carruthers looked to the floor and walked over to Ursula, took both of her hands in his. He stared into her eyes. Are you sure about this? Ursula smiled. Quite sure, dear. Carruthers exhaled and let go of her hands. All right, I'll stop trying to dissuade you. Thank you. There is one thing I need to do first, said Ursula. I need to take Ronnie to her old tree. Then we will come back to the cottage. Adrian, I'll make sure there are no unpleasant surprises in there, said Crothers. By the way, does Ronnie know your intentions? No, said Ursula. You and Adrian will need to support her. However, I do have something planned that will mitigate her grief. Great, said Crothers. And what will mitigate mine? Hanging down and kissed her cheek. Ursula smiled at him. You'll be fine, Mr. Crothers. Aye, he said quietly. I bloody well hope so. Laura quickly packed her clothes and personal items into a bag. Rodney immediately recognised it as Danny's. They returned swiftly to the car. Adrian drove them away from the town along the forest road. The one Ronnie had used. What? This is. Adrian drove him away from the town along the forest road Ronnie had used every time she cycled to Ursula's. Use the home. He parked the car in the nearby car park. As they got out, Ronnie walked over to the fence she had once upon a time chained her bike to, and held onto it for a few moments. Adrian joined her, making sure it was okay, as the others climbed out of the back seat of the car. Laura's wearing her own clothes now, but she still seemed a bit dazed and unsure of what was going on around her. Page 15 signed off. Would you prefer to wait in the car? Adrian asked Laura. He was surprised when Ursula answered. I'm sure she'll be fine, dear, the old lady said. Can I have my bag out? Can I have my bag? From the boot. Can I have my bag from the boot? Adrian grabbed the old tartan wheel trolley, put it on the ground before her. Where are you going? Have something to show Ronnie, replied Ursula. Laura will come with us too. We have to walk past my cottage on the way, so you boys can check it out for me. We won't be long. You boys, Crothers muttered under his breath. What do you want to show me? Asked Ronnie. Is it far? Not terribly far, dear, no. Ursula replied. She started walking away from the car park and down the path towards her home. Ronnie followed, taking Laura's hand as she did so. Laura still seemed like she was in shock. Crothers and Adrian followed. After a short time they arrived at the cottage. Adrian walked up to the front door and examined the wood. I think it's been broken into, he said after a few moments. Ronnie frowned. But by who? It must have been before the extinction, replied Ursula. Mr. Vickers, it would be terribly good of you and Mr. Crothers to check it out for me. The girls and I are going for a walk. We should be no longer than 45 minutes. If the ride in the house has been broken into, there might be somebody in there. Alive? Asked Laura, suddenly paying attention, looking around her wild-eyed. Oh, goodness gracious me, no, said Ursula. She turned to Adrian. I know it's an unpleasant task, but if there are any remains in there, would you remove them and open the windows to get some air in? Adrian nodded. I'll have to go back to the car to get the biohazard stuff. I've only got one set, so Mr. Crothers will have to wait. We'll have to stay outside until I have checked it out. Lovely, replied Ursula. Thank you. Come along, girls. She started striding further into the forest. Ronnie looked after her in astonishment. For the last few months up in the Cairngorms, Ursula seemed to have been. Again, something had happened to her once. Something that happened once when Ronnie was at university. Then, an interface had restored her vigour, but she'd not had time to do that since yesterday. Ronnie took Laura's hand and followed Ursula down the familiar path. See, you're getting a mukbang video as well. Good, isn't it? Marianne was sitting on a chair in one of the white recovery rooms. Mackenzie was lying on the bed, the covers folded neatly over his stomach. His eyes were closed, his arms were at his sides, he was breathing slowly. His face looked tired. Marianne was unused to seeing him with so little hair, and his skin was pale all over. He looked bony and fragile. Marianne found it hard to reconcile the figure before her with the person that they had known. Kendra had visited a couple of times, telling Marianne not to worry, and saying that it was not unusual for the freshly released to sleep for several hours. But every time I came into the room, she looked a little more worried, and her words of reassurance sounded a little more hollow. The door opened, and Kendra came in again. Clara's awake and talking now, she said. She went through a similar ordeal, same injuries, and they hibernated for the same amount of time. She stood next to the second chair by Marianne. A sleep this length is unusual. I'm going to check his vital signs again. She folded the linen back on the right-hand side of the bed. At 8. Sorry. Hey Siri, stop. That was an alarm to remind me to do something in my game I'm playing. Yay! Right, send me aeroplane full of stuff. Sorry. That should now be able to be loaded. And that one. So it's just the... Where are we? Bear with me. I will come back. Right. That's that done. And let me get back to... Where was I? Oh yeah. Sure, the linen back on the right side of the bed. And carefully checked his pulse. Marianne stood, applied the thermometer to his forehead, placed the oxygen saturation monitor on his finger. Finally, Kendra used a sphygmomanometer, his blood pressure. She packed it away again when she was done. Nothing unusual, said thoughtfully. But I'm honest, I'd expected a reaction when I took his blood pressure. I was watching his face, said Marianne. No reaction at all. As I sat heavily back down in the chair. He definitely recognised when he came out, though. This is not a problem yet. I say it's not a problem yet. It's not a problem yet. Said Kendra, choosing words carefully. Just a little unusual. I'm going to go and see Claire next door. Call me immediately if anything changes. Just lose the word immediately. Marianne nodded and watched as Kendra left the room, closing the door behind her. Marianne returned a gaze to Marianne. then reached under the sheets until they found his left hand. It felt cool to the touch. "Come back," they whispered. "All is forgiven." They squeezed his hand and leaned forwards, kissing him gently on the cheek. Then, pulling their chair closer so they could remain heated whilst holding his hand. "I need you," they whispered. I don't know when exactly you became so important to me, but I adored our friendship at Forest Lodge. I wasn't expecting it. When I was changing your sheets, at first I thought you were just a silly kid, but I got to know you. I got to realise how difficult your life has been. I started to look forward to our little interactions, and I know you felt the same. Then just as we understood each other, you left. You ran away. That really hurt me, Mackenzie, especially the reason you gave me. I'm sitting here now worrying that... will have changed. Marianne's eyes were red with tears, and they blinked. Leaned over his body, their left arm on his right shoulder, and their lips to his left ear. "And it's worse here, sweetheart. I don't fit in. Nobody's openly hostile, but they don't get me. If you're worried about people think of you, of us, in the old world, then here it would be much more intense." Sobbing, they kissed his cheek again. "I don't know if you have the strength for that. I'm not sure I even do." The hand went to his cheek, and they leaned down and kissed him gently on the lips, before leaning back and staring at his closed eyes. "I'm going to have to go, aren't I?" They sat upright in the chair and released his hand. "And that means letting me go too. Sorry. I want to be there for you at the moment. I'm not sure. I want to be there for you, but at the moment I'm not sure I can even be there for myself." Marianne closed their eyes and was about to allow themselves to cry when a voice to sob, because I think they were already crying, when a voice interrupted them from behind. "What does that mean? Let you go?" Marianne jumped and turned round to see Claire had entered the room. In some ways she resembled Mackenzie, with the close-cropped hair and pale skin. "Nothing," Marianne muttered. "Can I sit with you?" Marianne nodded numbly, and Claire, clad in the black dressing gown, took the seat next to them. "I heard most of that. I'm assuming you're Marianne?" Marianne nodded. Claire took the hand. "All he could do was talk about you. He deeply regretted what he said to you. He told me about it, that he was more worried about other people's feelings than his or yours. He told me he would do anything to change that." Marianne was staring downwards at their feet. "Please," said Claire, "look at me." Marianne turned the head, sleazy around. Marianne turned the head around and looked at Claire. His face. His face was somber. "He genuinely loved you. He told me that a few times. He said he no longer cared what everyone else said or thought. And that nobody else had ever made him feel as safe and comfortable as you did. So don't give up, darling." Marianne stood and was about to speak when they felt their stomach heave. They dashed out of the room with their hands covering their mouth. Claire turned back to Mackenzie and took his hand on the seat. "Come back, lovely," they said quietly. staring at the linen. Covering his thin frame. You need you. They need you as much as you need them. There was a cough from the bed. Claire, said Mackenzie as he opened his eyes. Claire jumped and hugged him. Jumped up and hugged him. Mackenzie, are you okay? Mackenzie looked up at her and smiled. I think so. I heard another voice. Marianne was here. They just stepped outside. I'm sure they'll be back in a moment. Mackenzie smiled broadly. I thought I heard their voice. Are they okay? Claire shook her head. They're very worried about you. I smiled down at him. Remember things you know about how you remember the things you told me about how you felt about them? Well, now you need to tell them. Tell them all of that. I know, he replied, looking anxious, but I don't know how they'll take it. I hurt them. I hurt them before. I hurt them before. I know, said Claire kindly, but they've forgiven you. The door opened. Mary entered the room. The eyes were red and the face was flushed. They took in the scene before them agape. I'll give you a moment, said Claire as she left the room, closing the doors behind her. Mackenzie carefully sat up and swung his nose over the side of the bed. He stepped gingerly down to the floor, wincing slightly as he used muscles that had been dormant for 3 years. He was naked apart from a pair of shorts that Kendra had put on him earlier. He stumbled forwards and hugged Marianne. For a moment they did not respond, put their arms around his thin frame and returned the hug. They felt his tiny frame in their arms and the warmth of his body that was pressed as it was pressed to them, the bones under his thin skin, his lips on theirs. As they parted, Marianne helped him back to the bed. I need to get a doctor to check you over. Before you do, let me say something. I'm sorry I hurt you in the car that night. I adore you. I'll stand on a chair with a loud howl and tell everybody if that helps you believe me. Marianne sat next to him on the bed and pretended to stick their fingers down the throat. What? He asked. We're in a strange world now. Being with me could ostracise you. Did Ronnie make it here okay? Yes. What about Ursula and Carruthers? Yes. I don't need loads of people around me, said Mackenzie. I'd rather have a few great friends than a lot of mediocre ones. What precisely are you saying? I'm saying I don't give a fuck what other people think. Marianne. I'm just going to add about you, about us. About you, about us. Marianne grinned. Now you sound like Mr. Carruthers. Yeah, well, give me 50 years and I'll look like him and all. Marianne laughed. Perish the thought. I stood up. I'll get the doctor. Then I'll tell you all about everything that's happened and about our new world. Mackenzie looked thoughtful. Is there any grub? He asked them. Marianne leaned down and kissed him again. Plenty, they said. Give me a moment. Can you ask Claire to come back in? He asked. I have a message for them from Signwolf. Okay? Marianne. Then from a moment later, Claire reappeared. Was that okay? Did it go okay? Did that go okay? Did that go okay? Did that? Did that go okay? She asked. I think so, said Mackenzie with a grin. I have something I need to ask you. Claire jumped on the bed next to him and hugged him. I'm so glad you're okay. I didn't think I'd ever see you again. Mackenzie went in bed, red and pulled away slightly. I have a message from Signwolf and Idrisil, he said. They don't want a gulf to ever appear between our people and theirs ever again. He leaned back, his arms behind him supporting his body. And they would like a permanent dialogue between us, and as such, they required 2 ambassadors. Ronnie is pregnant, apparently, so Idrisil decided not to ask her. You impressed Signwolf. They would like to invite you to take her place. It'll be different this time, though. Instead of us visiting them, they would want to visit us. Apparently once did it often. They used to walk in the bodies of animals regularly hundreds of years ago. Claire looked unsure. I had Signwolf in my head. I didn't like it very much. Understand, said Mackenzie. But only once or twice a year, for a day or 2 each time. It would be me and you. It would be me and you. And apparently we can we can coexist in our bodies with. We can coexist. Do's in our bodies. With them, so it won't be like last time. They can't make us do anything we don't want to do. Lose the do. Sorry about the offensive Scottish accent. Scottish accents aren't offensive. My interpretation of it is. Just the last paragraphs or two to do. Thank goodness, because I'm knackered. It was horrible last time, said Claire, shaking her head. Think about it, said Mackenzie. But it's your choice. But it is your choice. They won't do anything against your will. The door opened and Marion walked in with a plate piled high with protein-rich food. Lose the S. Behind her was Kendra, who looked relieved. Grab for you, said Marianne. They looked as Claire was about. They watched. Saw that. They saw that Claire was about to jump down from a seat next to Mackenzie. On the bed. So they motioned for her to stay. Claire looked at Mackenzie. I don't think I can do what they asked, she said softly. But I have a better suggestion. Oh God, I'm so tired. Again, jet lag, but well, I just need to run it through Grammarly, and then I have achieved my February targets. Amazing. Right, let's file export to Word. Save it on the desktop. Okay, then I just need to why has that crashed? Right, hang on, my control software seems to have stopped. Let me just go there for a second and then open this, then open this, then that. Right then. One of the options on here used to be what kind of English it is. Let me just go back into the goals because that disappeared. Resolution. She had. If. Removing commas, I'm happy to do. No. Comma. Well, oh, hello. That's the sign of a writer editing their work. What sign? Eating crisps. You're back. Sorry. Right. Right. What's he just done? That's a bloody sigh. Please don't say I've got to do that again. Oh, no. Oh, that's the sigh of a writer editing their work. Sorry. So I wasn't wearing my glasses when I looked at the TV screen. Right, so. Download. Did you get a bit? I always get a bit comma happy. I always put commas in the wrong place. I'm terrible at commas. So yes, that's I don't even argue when it tells me to do something weird with commas because it's going to be better than what I've done. Right, let's just. I am quite tired now. I still have to record the podcast, but right. So let's just dump this into a new file. And then dump it back into, there we go. Right, so that came, God, actually the word count has increased. That's unusual. It normally, did I get, yeah, sorry, I just thought it's something new, but it isn't. It's the same comment as before. Right, so, edited, what's the date today? 25th of the 2nd, 25, and Grammarly. Target bet. I don't know why I did that in a Dalek voice, but I did. Right, so I'm done. I'm done for the month. Done for the month. Let me just copy the folder into a different place. Sorry, the file into the edited folder. But I'm not where I need to be because that should have been the end of the book. But the characters are just blathering on. I don't want people to give a shit about them, so they're just blathering on. So, one more thing I'm going to do. How long has this session been? Okay, not too bad, about 2.5 hours. I'm going to record the pod, and then I'm going to go. So let's get the software up. Characters and all like that. Yeah, well, there's nothing I've just done that I wanted to remove. And to get it down to the length I'd originally anticipated, so much of it wouldn't be there. Right, so where are we? We are Tuesday the 25th. Let's do this. Hello, today is Tuesday the 25th of February 2025. That's 250225, unless you're an American, which goes to 022525. And you are listening to the Diary of a Wannabe Writer. And I can report progress. In fact, I can report that I have hit all of my February targets. So despite writing this chapter in the middle of the night and at weird times and when I was half asleep and not really feeling like editing it and then editing it, today I finally managed to get chapter 42 finished, and the first draft is finished anyway, edited, put through Grammarly. And so I set myself 2 targets at the beginning of this month. One was that I would continue to submit the English Hikikomori to agents, have at least 3 live submissions going at any one time, and to send a new one off within a week of any rejections I might have. Well, I've done that. And the other thing was to I'm really glad I worded it as write 2 chapters, because if the wording had been to finish the first draft of Empress of the Trees, I would have failed, because there is at least one. Well, no, it is only one more chapter. I've only got about 4 scenes I need to write now, but they're all crucial moments. They're all ones that really have to be there. I don't want to edit them down, and I was thinking of just carrying on writing with this chapter, whatever length it turned out to be, but. Again, you're writing and suddenly you reach a point you go, that's a really good end to the chapter, because it's not a cliffhanger, but it sort of is. It's I've got an idea, but it's not revealed on the next page what the idea is. So yes, February done. Now March, I will reiterate my targets on the first podcast in March, on March the 1st, presumably. But my March targets are looking rather like this. Right, the remaining chapter of Empress of the Trees. Yes, write the one chapter that I need to write. I'm not going to word it as finish the first draft, just in case something else unexpected happens, although that's very unlikely now. So yes, complete the remaining chapter of Empress of the Trees. And then I need to do some work on the 5th draft, the final draft of Still Life. I really, really need to get that done. It's probably much more, what's the word for it? It's probably something that would be better, more suitable to submitting to agents than the English Hikikomori. So, and I've also got a couple of other friends who would like to read it. And I've because I've said I've got one last draft to do, I've been procrastinating, saying, you can't have it yet, can't have it. The reality is, the 4th draft is almost there. Lots of people have read it. But it would be nice it would be nice to have the perfect, well, not perfect, it will never be perfect, but to have the signed off version done. So originally, when I thought I would have finished the first draft of Empress by the end of this month, my plan was to try and completely do the 5th draft of Still Life in March. And I do have 2 weeks off in the middle of March. In fact, I'm not working from the 8th to the 24th, so that's 16 days off. And I will get as much done as I can of Still Life. And the reality is I've still got 3 days this month. So it's good that I finished it today, because I'm basically working for the next 3 days. So tomorrow I have a flight to, I can't remember where. It's a short there and back flight, and then we spend the night, and then we fly to Manchester. So 3 flights tomorrow, somewhere and back, and then a Manchester night stop. And then on, I don't know what day it is today. So Thursday, we come back to London from Manchester, and then we've got another there and back flight, finishing about 8 o'clock at night. And then on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I fly to New York. That's the last day of the month. And the reality is I won't be doing any writing on the 28th because we leave reasonably early and it's quite late by the time we'll get to the hotel in Manhattan. But that's fine because the podcast for the 28th is already recorded. I think I might have already mentioned it, but I will say it again now. So on the 28th, you'll get an interview with T.G. Campbell, who is the writer of the Bow Street Society mystery series, because the 28th is the release date of her 7th book in the series, The Case of the Fatal Flaw. I was one of the beta readers. It's really, really good. So yes, I have a little chat with Tani about that book. And actually, there will be 2 versions. So the podcast is available in its normal form. I think it's about 15 minutes long, so it's a little longer than normal. And unusually, that very same podcast will be available as a video podcast at the same time that's released. But more interestingly than that, I wanted to talk to Tani about a lot of things, but I didn't want to overstretch the 15-minute format. So on my YouTube, as well as the video version of the podcast, which is identical to the podcast only with pictures, there is a 30-minute version of the interview talking about the book and the series and stuff like that. So I urge you to go to bowstreetsociety.com. Probably no point reading book 7 if you haven't read book 1, but you can read book 1 because it's dead good and it's called The Case of the Curious Client. Anyway, hooray, February targets met. That's me done for today. Hopefully I will talk to you tomorrow from the lovely Manchester, and you never know, I might even start chapter 43. Yes, chapter 43. I can't believe I'm saying there's going to be a chapter 43, but there is one. Anyway, thank you for listening. Take care. Bye-bye. Right. Yes, that is you. Sorry. Let me just edit the opening and closing credits onto that. Documents 6040. No, where am I? Podcast audio. So let me just pop opening credits and closing credits onto it. Where are we? So opening. Why is that doing that? That's better. And closing credits. I'm just going to make this full screen for a second. Sorry. So it just makes this work better. Just make sure that sounds okay at the beginning. Hello, today is Tuesday the 25th of February. Yep, that sounds fine. And then end credits on the end. Oh, wrong button again. What an idiot. And just quickly zoom in so I can just make sure that bit's okay. And that's cutting in a bit later. So, la 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 la. Chapter 43. I can't believe I'm saying there's going to be a chapter 43, but there is one. Anyway, thank you for listening. Take care. Bye-bye. You have been listening. Right, so that's fine. So file, no, cancel. So file, export as MP3. The file name is 250225. That's now saving. Might as well go to... Oh, no, you're on full screen, so you haven't actually seen the recording software there, which I normally have on the screen, not that it really matters, but... Right, so I'm now going to drag the file into a shared folder called Podcast Audio, which... I've gone on the wrong way round. I'm giving you that screen when I don't need to now. I'm tired. Right, so now I am just going to... upload it. So does this show 49 of this year? Bloody hell, it is. I think. Let's have a look. Podcast. So upload an episode. Select file. Where's the file? There. Oh, it's not appeared yet. You've been busy. I have been busy. Where the hell is that file then? Let's try that again. Cancel. Select a file. Oh, why is that not on here? Oh, this is very weird. Normally this works straight away. Let me just go into files on here, see if I can see it on here. Podcast audio. No. That's odd. Can I upload it from the computer? I probably can. Let's have a look. Spotify for podcasters. There we go. Oop. Oh, it doesn't want to play. Let's try a new episode. It don't want to play. Well, the file's there. I've definitely got it. Why is it doing that? I don't know why the file's not appearing, because this is a shared folder, so basically it should be on both. It normally is. It's synced with iCloud. Well, bloody isn't, because I can see everything but the episode I've just uploaded. I haven't got the file name wrong, have I? No. How weird. Have you saved it into the wrong folder? Nope, I can see the folder on my computer screen is identical to the folder on my phone, with the exception of the file I've just put there. It's even got the podcast for the 28th. Right, I'm going to shut my phone down. Turn it on again. I'm going to have a sip of this. Yeah, because that folder you can see on the screen there has got the other several episodes on it, including the one for the 28th. So, have you saved it to the wrong folder? No, the file in the wrong folder. No. I say it's the folder. It's the folder with all of the other podcasts in. I always save it to the same one. Try turning it on again. Ooh. My iPad is starting to run out of battery. Let's just plug that in. Is it not in your Empress folder? No, it's in my... Hang on, you can't see it, but if I drop that down a bit, it's in the podcast audio folder. And normally, literally, as soon as I put it on there... Oh, I wonder if it's because I'm not connected to my Wi-Fi network. Let me just reconnect to my Wi-Fi network, see if that makes a difference. I mean, it should synchronise anyway, because whether it's through the Wi-Fi or not... Oh, actually, why is it... Oh, there we go. Let's see if that works. I bet it was going to work now. Right, upload an episode. No, still not there. That's annoying. That's just bloody weird. Oh, I give up. I'll sort it out in a bit. Thank you for watching. It's not something that needs to be sorted out now, as long as it's sorted out in the next half hour or so. That's me done for today. And yeah, as I say, you'll get a podcast tomorrow. I might get some writing done, so if I get to the hotel and I'm not tired, I am going to start writing chapter 43. Because I've hit the target doesn't mean I can't get ahead for next month. So thank you so much, particularly to Bow Street Society, but anybody who has watched and hasn't sort of chatted, thank you. I will see everybody tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye. No. I probably won't see you tomorrow, but you'll hear the podcast tomorrow. I'll shut up. It's just appeared. It's just appeared. It's just appeared. It's just appeared. I can upload it now. Thank you for watching. Bye.